I like Dante quite a bit. He's a frame that's definitely not for everybody, but for those who get a hold of him and know how he works, oh, he feels so good to use. What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new Warframe video, coming at you with a first look at Dante, the new Warframe. Dante is our first quote-unquote mage Warframe. He's all about casting spells rather than your regular abilities, meaning he does require to press a lot of buttons. And for people who don't like pressing buttons in Warframe, well, too bad. So without any delay, let's get into his kit and show you how he works. Like many frames who have exalted weapons, Dante is the first Warframe to have a Grimoire exalted weapon, Noctua, his Grimoire. Activating the first ability brings up Noctua. Now, this ability does not drain any energy until you actually fire a shot, so similar to Artemis Bow from Ivara. It deals slash damage on its primary fire and has a tiny little explosion. On top of that, it has this little weird ricochet, as you can see. And its alternate fire throws out a projectile wave similar to the Arcoplasmor, and it deals radiation damage. There you go. This weapon and ability are just not that great when it comes to damage, so this will be the Helminth slot. However, if you want to keep this ability, this Grimoire, Noctua, has a unique trait where it can mod all of the tome mods, so no restriction when you mod this weapon. But of course, just because it could do this doesn't mean it's great. Now, his passive is quite unique, but at the same time, it's just like, because his passive ties into Noctua. When you shoot enemies with the tome, Noctua, it scans enemies. And when you have enemies fully scanned, you deal more status chance to them. 50% more status chance. I'm not sure if this status chance is a flat increase that applies after everything, or it's a base status chance, or a multiplier that is additive to your modded status chance. So, not really sure yet. Now, to understand the second and third ability, I have to explain his synergy as a whole. Since he's a mage, he goes between casting light and dark spells. Let's have a look at the first light spell, which is the second ability. This ability grants Dante Overguard. And the best part about this is that this Overguard can be shared with allies. Yes, it does have an Overguard cap, but this Overguard cap scales with strength. And this spell also ties in to his other passive. Let's have a look on the bottom right corner of the screen. Notice how there's a book, and this book doesn't look like it's filled with anything. But when we cast his second ability, we fill up a page. Notice how there's only one filled page. And our fourth ability is still grayed out. We can't use it. And we can only use the fourth ability when we combine two spells. So let's cast the second ability once again. Now, the book is lit up with 2 pages filled, and the fourth ability is available. Now, remember what I said, how the second ability grants you Overguard, as you can see on the top right corner. Combining the 2 light spells will grant everybody in the team Overguard, but that Overguard regenerates over time when you kill enemies. That is the Triumph buff. Temporary Overguard regeneration on kills and assists. This is pretty huge. Basically, it makes Dante unkillable. He's really good at surviving because when he casts his second ability, he also gets iframes. And when he casts his fourth ability after casting the second ability, that also gives him iframes. And when the Overguard breaks, that also gives you iframes. So you don't need brief respite or any sort of shield regen because he's all about Overguard and iframes. And the best part is, you don't need things like Rolling Guard or even Prime Sure-Footed. I know, right? So these are all the enemies shooting at me. I have Overguard right now. It gets deleted. I can cast my Overguard again. Activate my Overguard regen. He's really hard to kill. And when Overguard breaks, I have an iframe. And when I cast the ability, I also get iframes. And the best part about this Overguard is it doesn't get nullified. You can fall off the map, go into a nullifier bubble, it doesn't get nullified. So that is the light verse. Let's go over to the dark verse, which is the third ability. This ability slashes enemies with a force slash proc and bleeds enemies over time. The damage does scale with strength, of course, but now that we've filled up 2 of the dark spells, we can cast the fourth ability. which is an AoE nuke. Now, notice how it didn't do that much damage. It's because you have to time it properly. By combining the slash procs from the third ability and then immediately casting the 4, we dealt even more damage because this combination functions like expedite suffering. So how is this similar to expedite suffering? To understand, you have to know what expedite suffering does. So you know how damage over time takes over 6 seconds. So what that ability does, takes all of those ticks within those 6-second intervals and combines it into one massive damage over time tick, and then multiplies that damage. That's pretty much it. This is why when we combine the third verse and the fourth ability, we deal even more damage than just having the third verse, waiting for the ticks to go away, and then the enemies with no DOTs. Notice how the damage is far, far worse. So you need to have damage over time effect on the enemies before you finalize the cast. Otherwise, it's pretty much useless without that combination. Now that you understand light and dark, let's see how they combine. Combining light and dark will grant you Noctua on the side. This Noctua will not do anything unless you attack an enemy with a weapon. You see that? However, this Noctua will only deal 30% of the Noctua's damage. Unfortunately, even if you put strength on it, this 30% doesn't scale. So the combination of light first and dark is pretty much unless you're doing a weapon build, which could be a nice addition to your damage, like having multi-shot. Now let's have a look at the combination of dark first and then light. So dark and then light will summon these peregrims, 3 birds that fly around, stagger enemies, and also mark them. This mark, as you can see, enemies are surrounded by this aura. They're now vulnerable to my status effects, and they take more damage from my status application, which is pretty nice. So right now, my heat damage over time, or whatever slash damage over time, will deal even more damage. At the same time, these birds that fly around will proc bleed on the enemies. But another good thing about this ability is that it distracts enemies, having the aggro on them rather than on me. He already has Overguard and Regenerating Overguard, and now he also has Crowd Control. His fourth ability has 4 effects depending on which order you casted your second and third ability. However, here's another thing that you have to know about his cast order. For example, if I cast my second ability twice, we get that Triumph buff. However, if we cast my third ability, it gets overridden. If I cast my third ability again, that gets overridden. So it will take priority on the combination of the last ability. So for example, my last spell is a dark spell. If I cast a light spell, it will turn into dark and light. However, I cast another light spell, that last spell is the first spell cast. So now I'll have light light if I cast my light ability. I know, that was a lot of words. That's pretty much it. So now I have light light. If I cast a dark, it turns into light dark. Hopefully that makes sense. And that's pretty much Dante. He's not complicated at all. He's all about pressing abilities. And some people might not like that. I have one build that uses 2 different Helminth abilities. And both of these builds have insane ad clear and insane killing potential, but both of them function differently. All right, let's take a look at one of the Helminths that I'm using. The first one is Tempest Barrage. This comes from Hydroid, his first ability. You cast this ability and you send down a rain of corrosive damage. This corrosive damage will deal the damage and proc the corrosive stats effect. At the same time, you can slap on the augment Viral Tempest, which will then also proc viral with that corrosive rain. Now, if you have 2 green shards with the bonus corrosive stacks, this will have my Tempest Barrage fully strip enemies. Right now, all these enemies will get stripped and have viral on them. So, Tempest Barrage, Dark Verse twice, dead. Oh, wait, that guy survived. Never mind. Trust me, it works. It works. So with this loadout, I can have Armor Strip and I can also have Priming. That Armor Strip and Priming is very nice. And that means I can run the Nautilus. This Nautilus has Cordon, and Cordon will pull in enemies every 15 seconds. Now, since I'm killing enemies with 3 stats effects, corrosive, viral, and bleeds, it's able to trigger Manifold Bond. Killing enemies with 3 or more unique stats effects reduces companion abilities by 3 seconds. So it reduces Cordon's Radial Suck, which also have Assault mode paired with a primer, and this will help us with equilibrium on the build. Okay, here we are in Steel Path. We're just gonna go up to enemies, cast my second ability, and activate my Overguard regen. Cast Viral Tempest. 3, 3, 4. Enemies are dead. 3, 3, 4. Very, very clean. You know what? If I want some more survivability, I guess I can cast 3, 2, and have birds flying around. But see, these guys are affected with viral, corrosive, dead. Slash, slash, dead. Slash, slash, dead. Slash, slash, and dead. That's it. So let's take a look at that build. 2 casting speed shards, because he needs it, and Madurai, 100% casting speed, very nice. And then the green shards only if you're doing the Viral Tempest build. So let's take a look at that build. In the aura, I have enemy radar. The aura doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. 155% duration with primed continuity. Range at 175% with stretch and auger reach. This is to help Viral's Tempest coverage, explosion, and it also helps with his Dark Verse with 35 meters, and then the explosion with the Dark Verse at 52 meters. But yeah, Prime Flow and Equilibrium, very, very important here. At the same time, I have Streamline and Energize. He is an energy heavy spamming type of Warframe. Even though he has 769, nice, he expends so much energy, especially with this build. Since you're casting left and right, you're not stopping. Since you're killing so fast, enemies are going to be dead. You have to look for more enemies, kill them. And we have 159% modded strength with Power Drift and Umbral Intensify. We add 60% to that thanks to Molt Augmented when you get 250 kills. And finally, Viral Tempest, which is the Tempest Barrage Augment. So it procs viral, corrosive, viral, slash, refreshes Cordon, and you keep on going with the nuking. Very basic build. And yes, Archon Intensify does work with Dante's second ability because it counts as healing, which is also nice if you want to use that mod. The second build is the Roar setup. Roar, as you know, is a universal damage multiplier. It also affects abilities. And the best part is, his third ability bleeds enemies, and that also affects the damage over time. But another thing about this build is that it doesn't need the green shards, so you can replace these green shards and run red shards instead for even more strength. And since we're not using Viral Tempest, I am going to be using a primer. And that primer in question is, of course, the Epitaph. Build is very simple. You have Viral, Heat, and of course, Cucumber. Fulmination gives it a bigger AoE radius. 2 Void Slings, just for the strength, and then cast Roar. So you'd have to prime enemies. You stole my weapon, you son of a bitch. You have to prime enemies, cast your third ability, and nuke. So instead of using Viral Tempest, all you're doing is using Roar for the damage buff, and you'd have to prime. There you go. The cool thing about this loadout is that it has more coverage. If, of course, enemies spawn. There you go. We killed everything in sight. These guys didn't have status effects on them. Xmas unit right there. Let's prime him. Both of those guys dead. 2.9 million. Beautiful. You gotta have status effects. Caster 3. Dedge. The second build is a lot simpler and has more range. In the aura, I have Cross Projection, free damage buff. Range at 220% with stretch and overextended. Hell yeah. Prime Flow, Equilibrium, the usual. Continuity For the duration, it's dropped down a little because of transient fortitude. Those who want to use blind rage, go ahead. I just don't like the negative efficiency on Dante's ability cast. As you can see, it's pretty much similar to the first one, but this one has a bit more range, and we're balancing out that loss in strength with transient fortitude. That's about it. And then the same arcanes. Just make sure you have energy, recast your second ability, and you're good to go. And even if you cast your fourth ability with other combinations, you still get iframes. Just remember that, iframes and overguard. You're not going to have trouble surviving at all. Anyway, folks, that has been it for me. I do hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it. And if you did, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more Warframe content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, a peace. Stay tuned for the new videos.